Hey everybody, this is Andres from Board Gamify, and today I'm back to talk about Cascadia. Cascadia is a 1 to 4 player game where players are going to be drafting tiles and tokens to place in their environment, eventually scoring points based on the way they've placed those. So in this video, I'm going to actually show you how to set up and play the game, and then afterwards I'll do the review and give you some of my comments on it. I'm going to go ahead and include some timestamps below, so if you want to jump around, go ahead and check those out. So let's go ahead and start off with the setup. So to set up the game, the first thing you're going to want to do is lay out your 5 scoring cards. Now in Cascadia there's 5 different types of animals, and each animal is going to have its own scoring card, and they include 4 of each, labeled A, B, C, and D. So in your first game, they recommend you play with the A card, so that's what I have set up here. The next thing you're going to want to do is shuffle up all the tiles that come in the game and draw 20 for each player playing, plus an additional 3. So I've got 43 tiles set here. You'll want to put all of the wildlife tokens into the bag that they provide, and all of the nature tokens somewhere near for the players to grab. Then you'll want to hand each player their own starting habitat tile. The starting habitat tiles have 3 hexagons and represent all of the 5 different land types in the game: mountains, wetlands, rivers, forest, and prairies. So they're each slightly different, but give you representation of all the animals and habitats. Then you'll want to set out 4 habitat tiles from the stack that you created, and then you'll draw 4 wildlife tokens and place 1 above each habitat tile. Once you've done that, you're ready to play. So let's go ahead and go over how the flow of the game works and a typical turn structure. So on a player's turn, they're going to choose from the 4 tiles available and take the wildlife token that is above it. Once you've done that, you can take the token and place it adjacent to anywhere on your starting habitat tile. Now the rules for placement are one of the sides of the tile you took must match a neighboring tile. So in this case I'm matching the forests. I could also do this and match both the forest and the wetlands. From there you'll take the wildlife token and you can place this anywhere on your environment, including the tile that you just placed, with the restrictions being each environment habitat tile can only have 1 wildlife token, and the tile must show a picture of the token you're trying to place. So in this situation I'd only be able to place it here or here. If you're ever in a situation where you cannot place this token, you simply return it to the bag, and you can also choose not to place it. So go ahead and place this here. I would then place out a new tile, draw a token from the bag, and play would pass to my opponent. We'll continue doing this back and forth until all of these tokens have been exhausted, at which point the game is immediately over and we total up our scores to see who won. So now that we've got the flow of the game, let me explain a few other rules. So on your turn, if 3 of the wildlife tokens are ever the same, you have the option of taking all 3 of those and setting them aside and drawing 3 new ones from the bag. Now you're only allowed to do this once per turn. So if the 3 that you drew from the bag ended up making it so that there were 3 that matched again, you're stuck with those. Alternatively, if at any point during the game, if all 4 of the wildlife tokens match, you must immediately set those aside and draw 4 new ones from the bag. And you'll continue this until you don't get 4 identical tokens. You may have also noticed that some of these habitat tiles have a picture of a pine cone and a white arrow at the top. Each starting habitat also has 1 tile that represents those icons. Now what those mean is if you were to place a wildlife token on that tile, you would gain a nature token. And nature tokens serve a few different purposes. So the first one is on your turn, you can spend a wildlife token to take all of the animals out and draw 4 new ones, no matter what type of wildlife tokens are out. The other option is you can turn 1 in to take a habitat tile and wildlife token of your choice, so that they don't have to line up with each other. If I did that, I would replace the token and the tile from where I took them. And lastly, if any unused nature tokens at the end of the game are 1 point each. Now that brings us to the end game scoring. So once you get to the scoring, the first thing you're going to want to do is look at the scoring cards for each animal. Now, like I mentioned, there's 4 cards for each animal, so I'm not going to go over all of them, but I'll quickly explain the ones that we have out since it's the starting setup. So the first thing we'll do are the hawks. Now, hawks will score points for each hawk that you have that is not adjacent to another hawk. So you'll count up the hawks in your environment that satisfy that requirement, and you'll score that many points. Elk will score points for how many you have in a straight line, up to 4. Bears will score for being in pairs that are not adjacent to other bears. Then we have the fox, which will score a point for each unique animal that it's adjacent to, including other foxes, so a maximum of 5. And then salmon, which will score for how many salmon you have in a run. In contrast to the elk, they don't need to be in a straight line, they just need to be in a continuous run. From there, you'll look at your habitat tiles. Now what you'll want to do is count up the largest area you have of the 5 different types. So in this setup, I would have 2 prairie, 2 forest, 2 wetlands, 1 river, and 1 mountain. Those are my largest of each of those land types. So you'll score that many points for each of them. Once all players have done that, you'll see who had the largest area in each of those, and then you'll gain bonus points based on who had the most, and that'll vary depending on the number of players. Then lastly, you'll count up any unused nature tokens for 1 point each, and whoever has the most points wins. So that's Cascadia. As you can see, it's a pretty snappy game, really easy to pick up. So let me go ahead and dive into the review, and we'll start with the components. There's not many components to the game, but the ones that are here, the cardboard punch-outs are pretty good quality. They're pretty thick. They lay flat, haven't had any warping yet. The wildlife tokens are wooden discs that have been screen printed, so very nice there. The cards, they're decent cards, but I have noticed they've warped a bit. But to be honest, that really hasn't bothered me much. You lay the 5 cards out at the beginning of the game and then you don't touch them. So it really hasn't been an issue for me. The rulebook gets you set up pretty quickly. It was really easy to understand. They also include a solo variant in the back, which I haven't played, as well as some achievements that you can track as you play the game. One other thing I did want to mention is the variant scoring card that they include in the game. So this essentially replaces the 5 scoring cards that you would normally play with, and you score off of just this one. So it is a family variant, so you can play with kids, and it essentially just turns the scoring into groupings of same types of animals. So you'd score for each grouping of 1, 2, and 3 that you have, and there's also an intermediate variant, which is identical. The only difference is the groupings are now 2, 3, and 4. So really like that they included this. Kind of turns it into a matching game for kids. So yeah, really like that they included that. Next, we'll talk about player counts. I have played this at 2, 3, and 4. I enjoyed all of them. I think my sweet spot is probably 3 players, but I'd gladly play this at any player count. Really, the difference that you're going to see in them is the amount of tiles that change before it gets back to your turn, and I just found that I liked the 3-player pace a little bit better. Then variability. The game has a pretty high level of replayability. The nature tokens, there's a very large amount of them, so those will always be different. The wildlife tokens, will obviously be random as you play the game. But what really shines here are the scoring cards that they include. 4 of each type means that as you mix these up, every game is going to be different. When I table this, sometimes we'll play 2, maybe 3 games in a row, and it never feels stale. Every game feels different because the scoring cards have shifted, and it alters the strategy that you're going for. So yeah, overall, final thoughts. I really like the game. Highly recommend this. I would consider this maybe like a middleweight filler game. It's not your typical 10-15 minute filler game, but I think it's light enough that it can hit the table pretty often. You'll get 2 or 3 games in if you'd like, or just do 1 in between some of your larger games. So yeah, highly recommend this. If you guys enjoyed this video or you want to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll talk to you next time. Hey everybody, this is Andres from Board Gamify, and today I'm back to talk about Cascadia. Restarting.